Good evening, everyone, to those both online and in person. Welcome to the council meeting for October 14th. As I call the meeting to order, I'd just like to acknowledge that we do our business on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees and Kasapsum nations, and that their connections to these lands and waters continue to this day. First order of business is approval of the agenda. Moved and seconded. Any changes people wish to see? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed, not opposed? We have adoption of the minutes. I just want to point out that we had one eagle-eyed catch, or actually I think all of council caught it on one set of agenda. So there was an updated set of agenda package. So just with that note, make sure everybody's had a chance to see those changes. Any other changes, corrections, or amendments? Can I just say how much I appreciate people looking carefully at the agenda package and catching those things. They're very rare, and it was, but important to make sure that they are an accurate record. So with that, all those in favor? Any opposed, not opposed? My remarks are brief tonight. Just want to acknowledge the marathon that happened over the weekend. There was, for those of you who, some new things. So it's fairly new the last couple of years that both the 5K and the kids run happen in Oak Bay. Those used to happen downtown. They didn't used to be a 5K, so they sold out. There was 1,000 people in the 5K and 640-ish kids in the kids run, plus their attendant parents and things. So Willows Park was a very busy place on the Saturday, and of course the marathon had things. Now there was. Some people had issues with road closures. I just want to acknowledge that, and of course encourage people to reach out to the marathon with those so that they can keep improving. I know they're very cognizant of those things. And my only other real comment is just a reminder that the official community plan survey that's currently open closes today. So if you haven't filled that in yet, please do so. We are looking for input from the community to help guide that decision-making process. We move next to the public comment and question period. I'm not going to go through the rigmarole just because I don't see people online and I don't see anybody in the audience that would be here from the public to raise anything. But I'll make a call if there's anybody online that's listening perhaps and wishes to join in. You can do so through the Zoom app. But I think at this point I can move on past the public comment and question period. It's been a while since we haven't had anybody come forward and talk to us about issues of interest. Then we move to the reports and memorandums. This is open to public input. So if you're watching online and are interested, the process here that we follow is that we take a brief presentation from staff. We have opportunity for questions of the applicant or staff from council. We then go to the public for any additional comments or questions. We come back to this table, and we then look for a motion and we'll have a debate and discussion. So I think a fairly straightforward one to start with here. We have Mr. Hadfield, the planning technician, here to present. So I'll hand this over to you to do a brief introduction of the item. I do have indication that the applicant is available, but I don't actually currently see them here or online, but I don't think we probably have a lot of questions in any case. But go ahead, Mr. Hadfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. This item is a development variance permit application the district has received for the property located at 2939 Westdowne Road. The application requests reducing the minimum required separation between an existing house and a detached garage in the R4 zone from 3 meters to 2.11 meters. This is being requested to enable an existing non-conforming garage to be removed and replaced with a new garage building in the same location, or in roughly the same location. The new building will conform to the zoning bylaws side setback requirements, but the applicant is seeking to maintain the existing separation between the garage and the existing home. Staff have no concerns with the application and are recommending that the application be approved. I'm happy to answer any questions council might have on this one. The applicant, as you mentioned, was supposed to be in attendance, but I don't see him in the crowd.
Well, we'll just have to direct any and all questions to staff in this case. Are there any questions of staff on this item? Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff, I guess my only question was just regards to whether there was a particular hardship here. I didn't quite understand why moving the garage further back would be better for the tree when it looked like the tree was actually closer to the house. So I just wondered if you could just clarify that in particular. Is the hardship that they're using the same foundation? Because it looked like there was lots of room to move it back, but, and it might actually be better for the tree, but I might not be understanding the whole situation. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Hatfield, if you're able.
Yeah, thanks, through the mayor. Yeah, my understanding is that the footprint of the new garage will essentially consolidates the old garage and a new shed to the rear, and to push it further to the back may not impact trees necessarily, but there is a collection of existing mature vegetation, shrubs, hedges, etc., that would be impacted by that siting. And so the applicant's preference was to pursue this variance.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through Mayor to staff, then just to further clarify, so it sounds like part of the existing building might be staying as part of the new building, and therefore there is a very logistical reason why that siting would be beneficial, in my understanding?
Mr. Hatfield?
Could you rephrase, perhaps?
Yeah, go ahead. Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, my question is part of the existing building being retained as part of the new building, or is it simply to not disturb any earth and ground around the building? Thank you.
Mr. Hatfield.
Thanks for the mayor. The latter is correct, yeah. The building itself is not being retained, but the new proposed siting of the garage closely mimics the existing siting of the garage.
Anything else, Councillor Smart? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff, to Mr. Hatfield. You're on the spot tonight. I have a question about the proposal. I have to say that when I look at the drawing, the submission, it reads not like a garage. It reads like something else to me, like an accessory dwelling, not an accessory dwelling unit, but an accessory unit. And I know in the report you note that the applicants were cautioned that it wouldn't meet the requirements for an accessory dwelling unit. But I just wondered, is there a separate category for garage that this fits into as opposed to any other accessory structure? And I ask that just because it doesn't say garage to me at all. It's very skinny and long, and it's got windows to the floor, and I just ask if you know any more about it in that regard.
Yeah. Mr. Hatfield? We often take the what the applicant says to us and don't just go through it, but Mr. Hatfield?
Yeah, through the mayor. Good question. I'll attempt an answer, and then Andre, if you want to add anything from there. Under our zoning bylaw, we have essentially two types of accessory buildings, as you might be familiar, ADUs and accessory buildings. A garage is a type of accessory building, and so this would be classified as just a general accessory building, regardless of the specific dimensions and the suitability to the storing of a garage.
So we don't need to worry that the applicant himself or your staff are calling it a garage. It's just an accessory structure, basically, and as long as it meets those requirements. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think the garageness gives it an opportunity for exemptions from the floor area ratio for some things. So, anything else, Mr. Bull? You look like you're about to reach your finger over.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to know that accessory buildings have a number of uses that are allowed. So it includes garage, of course, or carport, but also tool shed, greenhouse, gazebo, or enclosed swimming pool. But yeah, we go with what the applicant declares it to be, and that has implications under the bylaw. And thanks. And yeah, if particularly on an accessory dwelling unit, that would be a very different process, because then the building itself needs to be built to different standards. So we make applicants aware of that, because if they have any interest in that in the future, they might as well future-proof it now. But if they're not interested in it, then it's simply an accessory building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to either Director Bull or Mr. Hadfield. In this, it is retaining the same dimensions between the dwelling unit and the accessory building unit. Just could you remind me the dimension that is set for the distance that is required between the principal dwelling and the accessory dwelling units? Is that something that is set by the district, or is that part of the building code?
Mr. Hatfield?
Yeah, through the mayor. That is, the 3-meter separation is set by the zoning bylaw. I'll note that the building code will have how to phrase it, various regulations in it that will also pertain to that, to which they would also need to conform.
You? I don't see any other hands. I'll make a call to the public, either online or in person. Does anybody wish to speak to the application at 2939 Westdowne Road? Are you the applicant? You probably don't need to speak, I don't think, unless there's any additional questions. I think we're almost at the point of the decision here, so I'll come back to this table. If there are any additional questions, we'll go there. But I'm going to come to this table and just suggest we start the process of moving receipt of a report.
Move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
Your worship, I would, sorry, just gonna make sure I have the right one here. I would move the recommendation that development variance permit DVP 00176 to reduce the minimum required separation between an existing house and an attached garage in the R4 zone for the property located at 2939 Westdowne Road be approved.
Moved. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. On to discussions or other further questions? Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. I will be supporting the motion on the table, but I just wanted to express that I don't particularly see a hardship here for why they couldn't make the building less big, closer to the house, but I'm supporting it because I would support any application that came forward with this scenario. My understanding for that setback is it's really related to firefighting access, and I do see that that's available around the other side of the house. So I just wanted to express that I'm supporting this because I would support it on any project, not because I see a particular hardship in this situation.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. I will note that Board of Variances are required to identify a hardship. We are not. We can make a judgment on variances using a wide variety of wide breadth of discretion on those. Any other discussion on the application before I call the question? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Passes. Thank you for coming this evening. And sorry to stop you from talking, but I thought it probably just as well to move along. And you're welcome to stay if you wish. We move then to item 6.2, which is the delegation of minor development variance permit applications. Mr. Green is not here, so Mr. Bowl, are you taking over the presentation? Please go ahead. And again, in same call, if anybody wishes to speak to this from the public, if you're watching online, please come into the Zoom application or call the 1-855 number. It's in the agenda package, and raise your hand through those pieces to do that. The 1-855 number, it says this in the agenda, but just for clarity, *9 to raise your hand. Please go ahead, Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Your Worship. A short introduction on my part. Mr. Green is away this week, so I'll introduce this item to you. The topic of delegated approval of minor variances dates quite a while back to June 2023, when we introduced our new development application procedures bylaw, and Council asked for options for delegated minor variances and a couple of other things as well, which are coming later. This concept was further explored earlier this year as well during the assessment phase of the optimization of development processes project, and included in as one of the key options to streamline processes. Today's report follows up on October's report from a year ago now. In the meantime, we couldn't report back. There was also talk of other matters, the major housing initiatives, but also the provincial advisor review process took some of our time over the winter to report and deal with that topic first. Following that, the Minister of Housing has intervened on this topic as well, and given us a directive requiring the district to establish draft guidelines that were reviewed last year, and we need to make changes by December 31st. However, since last year's report, the district bylaws have been further changed, and some of those changes could be reflected in this in the delegated approvals as well. And we're touching on that in the report. And we also, given council's interest in capping the number of variances potentially in this bylaw, we've looked at that further, provided some advice, but also looked at a collection of previous development variance permits with the goal of trying to assess, okay, which applications would have fallen under the proposed guidelines, and how effective is this collection of guidelines and options for variances. We found that most previous development variance permits would still be forwarded to council for a number of reasons. Some of them have multiple variances and some are clearly not minor, and others are simply, even though, well, they might be deemed minor or maybe they're not minor, but they happen to go beyond the provisions that we had drafted last year. So the current report brings back the original draft bylaw because it was at the time deferred. But we also have some proposed changes attached to the report. There's 3 changes, potential changes that you could endorse. A procedural section that deals with an appeals process. That's something that we hadn't detailed last year when the draft was here, but it's simply a requirement under the Local Government Act that if an applicant is not happy with the decision of the delegated approver, it can be reconsidered by yourselves. The second item is revised guidelines for the delegate that are a bit more concise and a little bit less subjective. And the recommendation or the reason those are being brought forward is to have more clarity on what the scope of the delegated approval is. And thirdly, there's also, in response to these recent changes, particularly around infill housing, we listed a couple of topics, either topics that could be where the delegated approval could be widened, but also topics for new concept in the zoning bylaw. For example, life landscaping and is a topic that's in there. And another one is specifically for existing buildings. That could be another rationale that could be included in the bylaw where specifically existing situations could be dealt with by staff. But all of that is for your consideration, of course. There's one correction in the report that we became aware of when we were reviewing the report further. There's a table that lists, let me see, it's the 4th table in the report. No, sorry, it's not the 4th. Is it called table 4? Thank you. Yeah, so the first line currently says height, variance type height, and then number 18. But that's incorrect. Height was actually the 2nd row. And the 1st row that has 18 requests or variances is the topic of setbacks. So I think we've been provided with an updated table in print, and we're going to make sure that the record is updated as well. Sorry for that mishap, but setbacks are the most dominant type of variance, followed by height at 8, and then every number slips 1 row down, so to say. With that, that's my introduction. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going for my own clarity of process. There's a recommended staff recommendation here, which basically says that to go forth and read first and second time, and then to include a procedural pieces to add these pieces, and that'll come back as an amended second reading. What I'm not clear about in that motion is whether or not the there's all of the changes that are listed in the report, but then there's 5 what are called potential additions. And so I just want to, from a procedure perspective, because it just refers to the report in that wording, and I just want to be clear if that language under option 1 staff recommendation includes the 5 quote-unquote potential additions because they're in the report, or would they have to be a set of amendments again to include those if council saw fit? And sorry, I should have.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, the intent, the motion as written, or the recommendation as provided to you, includes those 5 variance additional options as formulated in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. That's helpful. Okay, that was I just wanted to make sure we were clear on the motion piece, but we're not going to get there yet. First, same order of business as last time. Again, if people are online, questions of staff, come back to this. Then I'll go to the public, come back to this table, and we'll get some direction. Questions? Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. Brief question, I think. From the way that I interpret this, the bylaw language, well, actually, the recommendation from the provincial advisor. It seems to me that the provincial advisor has essentially pulled their language in their guidance letter from the original proposed bylaw, or the original bylaw language that the district had drafted. So those two things are more or less in alignment. I don't know whether the letter specifically states that it pulls that language from the previous bylaw, but that seems to be the way that it appears to me. So just looking for confirmation for that.
Mr. Bull, that's how I read it as well. Is that your reading is that the language that was in the letter essentially mimics the report that came to council earlier?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, it does, except for the last comment. There was something added there at the very end about not limiting the number of minor variances that could be requested. But other than that, it is verbatim from last year's staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Green? It's okay, just Councillor Smart, Councillor Green, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. So my main question is just with regards to the guidelines 1A and B, and it's with regards to in following those guidelines, whether they are additive or separate, and whether something with a physical limitation due to the site might be considered if it doesn't have a community or environmental benefit to the community. I had read that in the provincial ask and in the bylaw as an or, but in the report I almost read it as an and so I just wanted to have that clarified as to what staff's interpretation is. Like, in order to be considered, must it meet 1A and B? I'm assuming it's A or B.
Mr. Bull, actually, there's A, B, and C, correct? Is that? Yeah, okay. So this is the physical or legal constraint, community environmental benefit, and consistent with the general purpose of the applicable laws. Those are the three pieces. Mr. Bull?
Can I ask what you're actually referring to in the document or the attachments?
Not a problem. I'm on page, assuming the page numbers haven't changed, page 47 of 67, right at the bottom, where it says guidelines, and it has 1A and B. Thank you.
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, through you. That's from the wording from the bylaw from last year. And there's also alternative wording that we are recommending in attachment 4, which would be page 56 of 67. It's a bit shorter there. That's where there's ABC under number 1, because there's no number 2. In any case, though, in both wording options, we didn't specifically add in the wording that it would be and I think this is probably more of an or, because I can see that, it depends on the variance. The current wording is not saying and, so it would be interpreted as or. And if that's okay, we'll leave it at that. But we could also change it, of course, if that's the wish of council. Thank you.
Is that good, Councillor Smart?
Thank you for that clarification. My other question was just regards to the appeal process, and two questions on that. The first one is, I assume that only the applicant can appeal and not potentially a neighboring property that's unhappy with the variance that has been granted. And the second part of that is, I assume that an applicant that is denied is informed of the option to appeal. If you could just clarify those 2 points. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, for you, Your Worship. Indeed, this is only open to the applicant themselves, and as part of the process, whatever the decision is that's taken, or I guess particularly if the decision is not in favor of the application, we would make sure that the applicant is informed of their options under the bylaw, and they can take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Green and then Watson.
Thank you very much, and through you to Mr. Bull, thank you for the report. I just have a few questions, and it's sort of a general question rolled up with a number of segments, but because the first two issues, height and setbacks, have the greatest impact on adjacent properties, first of all, And we've seen examples of those recently in Oak Bay. I'm just wanting to clarify for myself through you that basically how do we make these decisions, I guess, around criteria and philosophy? How is context and livability, how are they reflected in the decision making? What is the oversight by the department? And I guess the final question, because it's one we hear a lot about, is the capacity in the department. It's a concern, I think, and it has been an ongoing concern. So would it be possible just to make comments around those questions? I know they're quite general, but I think it's important that we all understand how these decisions are made and what the ultimate impacts are. Thank you.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Let me see, for the consideration of the variances, that's where those guidelines are going to be weighed particularly. So the previous guidelines were a bit more, from last year, they were a bit more wide-ranging, but also had some very subjective matters, right? Particularly affecting the use and enjoyment of adjacent land is a really tough one for delegated approval. Although, let me see, and I think we, in the other updated guidelines, we're focusing on, well, is it necessary? Because we also have seen sometimes variances that come to council that are not necessarily necessary, but they're convenient for the purposes of the applicant. That's an example of a variance that would go to council. So we would rely heavily on those, whatever the guidelines is that you include in the bylaw. The practical process in the department would be that a planner would review this file for me or for Mr. Green, and we would get a report, not a written report, of course, but we would get a recommendation and a justification of where this decision would fall, and then we would act as a second pair of eyes to review that and see, is there anything else we can work with the applicant perhaps, or is this squarely within the parameters of the bylaw? And that's the third leg of this, that the bylaw is very specific, right? In the case of height, it limits that height to, what was it again? 10% is currently proposed in the bylaw, and for setbacks, 25%. And I think for setbacks, you could consider additional flexibility, but for height, because we recognize it's such a sensitive topic, we didn't want to give any further flexibility on that part without your eyes on it. So yeah, in terms of capacity, a delegated approval process does save a little bit of time, so those processes will be a little bit shorter. But like any application, we need to make sure we do our due diligence and apply the framework that needs to be applied to those. Thank you.
Councillor Green?
Through you to Mr. Bull. Mr. Bull, do you think that that the minor variances will require more site visits on the part of staff before they make final decisions? And I only say that because, it may put, again, additional workload on your department, and I am concerned about that. Thank you.
Mr. Bull?
Through you, Mayor, not necessarily a site visit is really expected for any application, so including these. And I think with variances, we haven't set up the process specifically yet, but it would be good to make sure that's a meeting with the applicant or their designer to understand where the rationale is, and specifically look at that. Usually the current site visits are more general understanding of the site, but in this case with the staff delegated approval, some of it's, what we normally bring to you for your consideration now needs to be done by ourselves, so that does require a different site visit, I think, with a bit more due diligence on site, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Councillor Watson and Patterson.
Thank you, and this will be to Mr. Bull. I just wanted to ask a question as articulately as I can about the proposals for the delegation around live landscaping. In the report, it says that you recommend including additional delegation criteria allowing variances that pertain to the configuration of the live landscaping requirement, but that do not vary the total amount required. And I just hearken back to when we actually developed this proposal, and it was all about consolidation of live landscaping in order to achieve an environmental benefit. And I don't see those two things necessarily adding up, particularly when one of the policy guidelines about allowing delegation to staff is if there is an environmental benefit. I can only see breaking up live landscaping to smaller areas as doing exactly the opposite. So I just wondered if you could comment on that, please.
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you for the mayor. Yeah, that particular one, the live landscaping and the consolidated area for it is this, I think it's 35 square meters. It's meant to be suitable for a larger tree to be grown. It does have in our bylaw specific dimensions. I can look them up for you, but our thinking is that in some cases, depending on the site plan, maybe that shape needs to change a little bit. It should still be a consolidated area, otherwise we're kind of beyond the intent of the bylaw, I think. So it's minor variations to that shape. Maybe the shape is a bit more rectangular than square, for example. That's what the intent is. It's not quite specified in here, but maybe we need to look at the wording for that. But that's definitely the intent, because we want to stay with the intent of the bylaw. The intent is to have enough area for that tree. So yes, the shape could be a little bit different, but it cannot become this narrow strip that I think we were talking about earlier with our consultants, that is not suitable for trees. So that would be too far out of the, too much of a variance for staff to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, maybe council will get to discuss that and agree on that. But I would support that approach, that there does need to be some limit on that, because if you go back to a skinny 2-inch wide, but it meets the square footage, it's really not going to achieve the objective. And then a question about the proposal in general, and this isn't really. I mean, it may sound a little tongue in cheek, but when we received our order from. It's not meant to be. When we received our order from Minister Callan, we were basically told to adopt what we had in the previous report, with the one exception that we were now also to allow no limit on the number of variances granted. And I can see in what we have in front of us now, we've addressed that second issue, and I've done some good staff policy analysis and created a more liberal and more flexible bylaw. Are we allowed to do that, or do we have to go back and ask for permission to do something that's actually more effective? And I ask that as a serious question, because we did receive an order. So, yeah. Not that I don't like what's being proposed, but I just do wonder.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you for the mayor. We did have one conversation with ministry staff about this and to seek some clarification, but the intent is to support housing projects and making it easier, right? That's a provincial goal to expedite new housing units. So we explore that. We might make changes, and there on the staff level, the indication was that, well, if that's not taken away from what the minister has asked, then you're free to make further changes or make it more liberal or whatever you want to call it. So that is definitely an option. Thank you.
Thank you. That's everything.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Patterson next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Director Bull. I do appreciate that clarification on the live landscaping, because that was definitely one that I had flagged also. Mr. Bull, if you could, on page 4 where it lists the DVP application type and the variance types, out of what is shown on that page, do you have information available on out of these ones that have gone through the process already, how many were approved out of all of these ones? I guess what I'm getting to is if to expedite this process, if staff were doing this, how many would staff be looking at in these that they would have approved with these delegated authority to do so versus what was actually approved in the process?
Sure, Mr. Bull.
Yeah, thank you for you, Mayor. Yes, I have some information on that. Let me see. There were 23 applications in our sample. 17 applications were approved by council. 1 was denied. There were also 3 withdrawn. one by the applicant, one because a related rezoning got rejected, and one didn't complete the intake process, and 2 are still in progress. So it's mostly approved or withdrawn variances, but yeah, a majority were approved applications. Thank you.
So if I might just follow through on this, so it looks like, it appears to me at least that we're getting closer to having a realistic formula of how to do these that are coming back to meet the needs of the community and to somewhat expedite the process as it's before us then.
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you. That's indeed where we did the analysis we completed, because we wanted to understand that better, how it would work out for the type of variances that we have seen in the recent past. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. I'll take it off my list. So just, I'm going back to Councillor Smart's question. I need to be absolutely clear I understand this, is that the language is that it can be for one of 2 reasons, basically. It's necessary to address a physical or legal constraint, or there's an environmental benefit or other community benefit. And then those are the 2 options that a minor variance can be considered. And then if the proposed variance, then for all applications, obviously it has to be consistent with the general intent. Is that is that understanding correct? Do you want me to ask that again?
No, thank you, Mayor. No, I think you're clarifying it, but in a certain way. That it would be worthwhile to spell that out, I think, in the bylaw, if that's the intent. I think it does make sense, because I would be concerned, even if one of the 2 first, A or B, applies, if it's not consistent with the intent, then I'm going to doubt as staff if that is a minor variance. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
So I think simple wording could be separating out that, first of all, that any application has to be consistent with the general purpose and should meet one of the 2 criteria, one or both of the 2 criteria, and have those A and B. And that would be a little bit clearer. The linear plus and makes it confusing. So that's just, but thank you for that clarification. That'll be worked on in the wording. And I think that I wasn't entirely sure I understood what I heard. I thought anyway. I'll just ask the question: if an applicant goes to a staff, goes through a variance application process and does not get it, and it goes through an appeal process and comes to council, does it then follow a normal variance appeal, like a variance application process, like there's a notification to neighbors, there's those other pieces, or does it follow a different process if it goes through a initial ask of staff and then to council?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We also included the flow chart. It is shown there, but it's very high level. It is a bit different in the sense that we don't restart the process, and we won't prepare a council report for you like we usually do. Like we
sorry,
just
it is
did.
actually in the flow chart there. The public
Yes.
notification does happen. So it follows the same public notification.
Yeah, there is
process.
notification, but it's actually an item that simply appears on your agenda with the materials that were provided, the decision that we took, and that's the material we look at. So that's a bit of a different approach than with the regular variances. Thank you.
Right. That's only if the staff approve. Sorry, for clarification as a follow-up, that report to council is just as it's approved, it comes piece. But if it's declined and it goes through that piece, the notification would still happen as per any normal variance application.
Yes, that's my understanding. As soon as council is going to consider a variance, there needs to be notification. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any value here in including in some of the aspects of having some heritage values as well? Because I know quite often there's I think helpful suggestions about formalizing pre-existing siting and height nonconformities, which are often an issue with more sort of older buildings that may not be heritage per se. But I just wasn't sure in the consideration if there was any additional value of being specific about, just sort of recognizing that heritage might drive some additional pieces, or if the consideration of that would largely be in the, formalizing pre-existing, because those would have been built at a time predating the current zoning bylaw. Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It depends a bit on the status of that, the building that might have heritage value, if it's designated or in the heritage conservation area, we would get a different type of application. It would be a heritage alteration permit. But there are also properties on the register or that are not recognized yet in any shape or form that could have, will have heritage value from time to time. That's up to council if that could be another, maybe a third option there or a consideration that the variance is minor and it's informed by the heritage character of the house, or it seeks to retain the heritage character perhaps. It's a bit more, it's another option, I think, yeah. But we haven't included that specifically because with any consideration about heritage, it's right now we don't have a clear set of guidelines for that to evaluate that unless we point to something, and it would be a little bit heavy-handed to point to the HCA guidelines, for example, because they're very extensive. But maybe in the future, at some point, we'll have something else. But it's it's something that could be considered as another topic that you could add. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think it might be worthwhile to include that. It might provide some incentive for people to have things on the heritage register as well. I think that's it. Those are all my questions that are remaining. So thank you very much for that. Since everybody's had a chance to ask questions of staff, I'm going to just again reach out to the public at this point to see if there's any public input. There's nobody in the room now, so I'm going to just look online, and I show nobody here that has indicated any indication they wish to speak. So I'm going to bring it back to this table and turn to members of council. So we've heard clarification. Option 1 includes the 5 potential additions, just for clarification, so we're not having to do option 2 with adding those, so that's clear. So I might turn to members of council and get someone wishes, probably recommend we move that motion, then take any additional motions to amend can be done at that point.
I'll move receipt of staff report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I will move option 1, the staff recommended option as per the staff report, Your Worship.
Okay, I'm just
Second.
So we need to do bylaws here, correct? Trying to make sure I'm clear on our process.
Right.
So I think we need to read in bylaws first and second time, and then we'll take any additional minor changes to that as well.
Very good, Your Worship. So firstly, I would move that Development Application Procedures Bylaw number 4844, 2023, Amendment Bylaw number 4870, 2025, be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Do people wish to discuss that at this point, or I'm happy to take any discussion, and then we can move to, if anybody wishes to. I think we'll take the second part of this, which is including the other pieces for changes to the bylaw, and at that point, again, to consider any other additional changes or or amendments that people wish to see. So any discussion on the first and second reading? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
So, Your Worship, at this point, I would now move that staff recommendation as per option 1 in the staff report be advanced.
I think I'm going to just ask if you don't mind to read it aloud.
The entirety?
Because it's an amendment by law, so amendment to the bylaw, I think it's good to have that on the record.
Very good, Your Worship. This may take me some time.
Not that long.
So I would move that Development Application Procedures Bylaw number 4844, 2023, Amendment Bylaw number 4870, 2025 be amended to include a procedural section, updated delegate guidelines, and the additional minor variances as outlined in the staff report titled Delegation of Minor Development Variance Permits, authored by Brian Green, Deputy Director of Community Building and Planning Services, dated October the 14th, 2025.
Thank you for doing that. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded, thank you. I think at this point, because this is giving the direction to amend, if there's any additional changes that people would like to see or removed, this is the time to do so through amendments. I have Councillor Watson and then Green, and then we can also this motion is obviously live on the floor for comments as well. Councillor Watson?
Thank you. I'd just like to amend the motion to specifically refer to the proposed changes to the live landscaping standards. I don't quite know how to word it, but Mr. Bowl clearly has something in mind. So to
How about I just
it's on the
stop you there for a
fly,
second
yes,
before
yeah,
you
yeah,
make a
yeah,
motion, because I
yeah.
always like motions to be clean. I'm just gonna ask, that's okay, I'm just gonna ask Mr. Bold, you mentioned that there may be, I guess I'll just seek if there's a, because this language essentially says, refers to the report, and it talks to that in the report, but isn't specific to bylaw language at this point. So based on the conversation here, do you need a motion to clarify the language in the bylaw that captures the conversation here, which is to make sure that the language doesn't allow for the non-contiguous of the intent? Or do you feel comfortable with the discussion we've had here to make sure that the bylaw language, reflects that intent? And so I'll just turn it to you as to which direction you would like to get.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, if council is agreeable to the explanation I gave today, and my explanation of how that would be, have some boundaries in the eventual wording, then I don't need further direction. But if there's a desire to make other changes or different ways, then I would need to know. Thank you.
So I'm going to probably suggest that we leave it there, and then once the bylaw change language comes back, we can obviously amend it again when it comes back if we don't feel it's sufficient for the purpose. Thank you.
I withdraw my proposed amendments to the motion. Thank
No,
you.
no worries. It wasn't seconded yet, so I took that as a thing. All right, Councillor Green.
Thank you. And following on your points and comments, I would like to see a reference somewhere regarding heritage and heritage properties. I think it's important. I think it defines much of the context of a major part of our community. And so if there is a way to include a reference to heritage properties, registered or designated or not, a lot of people value older homes. They're not necessarily heritage registered or designated, as we know, but they value the neighborhood and the context. So I would like a reference somehow. I'm sorry, I don't have exact wording. I would be seeking guidance from
Sure.
our
I
director.
won't take it as a motion just yet. I'll just take it as I'll ask the question of how we
Okay.
might. Mr. Bowl, you know the draft bylaw and the proposed changes here. When I asked the question, my thought was probably it might fit under, A, B, and then maybe just adding a C where the consideration might be either physical or legal constraint, environmental benefit, or protection of a recognized heritage asset, something along those lines. That would consider, they would have to be under the heritage registry, but if it was recognized, but it wouldn't. I think the language could have to come, but that was my thought, is that, or we could just ask in general terms that we could. So before I'm just going to ask Mr. Bull, do you wish to have, before I get a motion on the floor, just to give some guidance on what that motion would look like, and then we can debate the merits thereof? Would you prefer it be as specific or suggesting that would be the guidelines portion, or would you rather just say include in the bylaws recognition of protection of heritage as a component of the bylaw? Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the offer to provide input. I think probably something like that would fit with the guidelines. Would be good to spell that out and maybe in general terms express what the intent is. Is that heritage in general or heritage specifically for registered or designated properties? And then we can take that and provide wording in what comes back to you. Thank you.
Councillor Green?
I guess my general question, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I was wondering if you could define heritage not just as registered or designated properties, because a lot of non-designated or non-registered properties are vulnerable. We learned that with the Butchart House. So I guess my point is, if we can make a reference to heritage, it doesn't have to be built heritage as well. It could also be a landmark. So I like your term asset, heritage assets. It's general enough that it would be more inclusive, perhaps.
Sure,
Anyway.
I'll put that as a question to staff, and really, I think we're always struggling in a bylaw to be as broad but yet as specific as possible, so that there's clear guidelines for staff. And I agree with all of what you just said, Councillor Green. I'm concerned in a bylaw if it doesn't have something more official, then it may make it difficult for staff to. Again, this is not prevented; it's just to allow them to essentially deal with these things as minor and delegated. Mr. Bull.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and that's definitely sounds like a general heritage lens, if you were. That is something, it could be potentially included under B, where we do have more general reference to community benefits or environmental benefits. Perhaps heritage could fit there as a more general concept. Or alternatively, if you want to have it specifically narrowed, then it's could be spelled out what it's specifically. It does introduce a bit of subjectivity, what is heritage or not, but at the same time, for minor variances, I think we can take a bit of a common sense approach, I would call it, and base that consideration on what is in front of us. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to suggest then as a motion that the motion would be to direct, to amend to include heritage amongst the guidelines of the bylaw. And then that way staff can take that away and decide whether that works or not. But I'm hearing that probably does make sense, but wordsmithing at the table worries me. So I think that's
Well,
probably general enough.
I hate doing motions on the fly, so I agree with you. And I really appreciate the input. Mr. Bolt, thank you.
So the motion as I have right now is just to amend to include heritage within the guidelines. Okay. And how that is done will be up to staff, but ultimately that will come back for council's consideration as to whether that meets the will of council. So just, I'm going to see if there's a seconder before we start discussing it. So is there a seconder for that? Seconded, okay. I think you've already motivated a little bit, so Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So just a point of clarification. When we're talking about guidelines, you indicated that that would be included in guidelines. It would be in guidelines section 1, not guidelines section 2. Because guidelines section
Correct.
1 is outlining things that must be considered. Guideline section 2 is, must not in terms of result in, because again, with I'm fully in support of including heritage, but with the somewhat subjective application here, it may be difficult to reject under section 2 based on
My understanding
heritage.
is that the revised bylaws in the report strike the must nots from the bylaw.
Must not, okay.
So those are all gone, so it would just be in the guidelines portion which says, shall consider these as part of the
Shocking.
pieces.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Bull?
Thank you for the clarification, Your Worship.
So the motion right now is to include heritage amongst the guidelines. Any other discussion on that? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Any other amendments to these? I don't see any, so I'm ready to call the amended second part of this motion, which is to direct those changes to come back as part of the revised bylaw. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bull. We have two other items on the agenda. The next section, section 7, is a adoption of a bylaw. So we don't have public input on this, but there is on the last item on the agenda, which is amenity and development cost charges, 8.1. But first, 7.1, can I get someone to read in the adoption motion?
Your Worship, I would move that Streets and Traffic Bylaw number 4100, 2000, Amendment Bylaw number 4933, 2025 be adopted.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. We don't usually debate on adoption, but if anybody has had in their sober second thought and decided to bring up a point not previously considered, we'll take it now. Seeing no hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Moving on to section 8, we have amenity and development cost charge reserve fund establishment bylaws. We have Ms. LaChance, our Director of Finance and Asset Management, here with us online. Ms. LaChance, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. You can hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent, thank you. Staff are returning to Council this evening to present the cost charge reserve bylaws for first 3 readings. Council's approval of these bylaws is largely housekeeping in nature. They are required in follow-up to Council's approval earlier this year of both the development cost charge and amenity cost charge bylaws, number 4891 and 4892. As a reminder, both of these bylaws went into effect immediately upon Council's approval, with the rates being applied to applications throughout 2025, unless, in some cases, the 12-month in-stream protection applied. Legislation states that funds received under cost charge bylaws be placed in separate reserve funds established by bylaw. All funds and reserves are restricted for use only on the growth-related capital expenditures, and the use of these funds can only be authorized by Council in the approved five-year financial plan. Establishing these bylaws now is required in preparation for the 2025 financial year end, and also as part of the 2026 financial planning process. Going forward, each year, council will be able to see the cost charges collected across all categories, like transportation, fire, and police, among others. And you will see those reserves are used for capital expenditures. Related, the 1% municipal assist portion will also be incorporated into long-term asset planning forecasts and future financial plans. Lastly, council can expect to see new disclosure annually in the audited financial statements, as the district is required to show separately each reserve's activities and balances. The recommendation this evening is to receive the report and provide 3 readings to each bylaw. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance. Are there questions? Just a little minor question on my end, since seeing no other hands. Just on the reserves, it wasn't entirely clear reading the bylaw language itself. As the money goes into the development cost charge bylaw, it can be used for these. Does it get split up under a proportion originally, and they have to be, and each can only pull out the percentage it has put in there, or is there a general reserve for DCCs of which, say, a transportation could pull out its portion earlier, and then maybe the drainage reserve would come out at a later time? I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear about whether or not this is all sort of restricted at the time of entry, or if there's a movement to shift the overall reserve funds as needed as projects arise. That concludes my question, Ms. LaChance.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the question. Back to your question, Your Worship. You're absolutely correct. The funds come in and are segregated in their respective reserves, and then are drawn individually for drainage, water, transportation, as needed as those projects get underway.
Okay, and so there's no ability, if we were to pull out money next year for a Parks Reserve, for instance, it would just be the amount put into that one reserve over this first year. It wouldn't be able to pull from the total amount put into DCC's reserves. We'd only have access to that one reserve. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. As it relates to the development cost charge bylaws, there's separate accounts set up, as you'll see within the bylaw in front of you this evening.
Okay.
Related to the amenity cost charge bylaw, it does cover a wider range of assets.
Mm-hmm.
It's got recreation type assets that can be covered from that reserve.
Perfect, thank you. And is there flexibility? I appreciate it's a bit of a cumbersome process, but I know for some types of reserves, you can essentially borrow from one reserve and then pay it back with interest. Is that available within the DCC reserve model, or is it, or not?
Yes, you can absolutely, by legislation, borrow and repay before a reserve requires the money to be there for the specified use.
Okay.
Given the nature of our newly implemented DCC and ACC charges, these will not be reserves that you'll likely borrow from. This would be other reserves, such as the infrastructure renewal reserve that you'd be borrowing from.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That is true. I just thought, just for my own clarification about what the restrictions are in this process. So thank you for that information. Certainly appreciate that. These are largely driven by legislative requirements more than policy decision at the council table, which is of course why everybody else decided to not ask questions and get out of here a little earlier. So I'm going to then turn back to our members of the public. If any members of the public, online or in person, wish to speak to this item, I'm happy to take those questions or comments now. Nobody is in the room with us, and I don't see any hands online, so I'll come back to this table and just start off with the motion to receive.
I will make a motion to receive the staff report, Your Worship.
Move seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. And then somebody can read out the...
I will move, Your Worship, then amenity cost charges reserve fund bylaw number 4934, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? No. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed.
Your Worship, I would move that amenity cost charges reserve fund bylaw number 4934, 2025 be read a third time.
Same seconder. All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Please continue.
Your worship, I move that development cost charges reserve funds bylaw number 4935, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Same seconder. E seconder, we had lots of hands. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Thank you.
Your worship, I further move that development cost charges reserve funds bylaw number 4935, 2025 be read a third time.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Thank you. Don't usually discuss on third reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. I don't have any new business, or nobody's told me they have a notice of motion. So I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn. Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. What's that? Yeah, we're just over an hour. No one's watching.